Hello, viewers, and welcome to the Module 3 for the project, the Microsoft Project Fundamental course. Here we will continue with defining project baseline and see if there are changes, how you look at that. So let's pull up our project plan for Mr. John, which we already started with. And here we saw that we did something about looking at a critical part in the last video, and so we will switch up those critical parts. But again, just as a reminder, when you make a plan and you check for critical part, make sure if you have a lot of them, figure out what you want to do, because that's a lot of risk in a plan. So to switch up this, we go to Format and Critical, and then that goes up. So why do we want a baseline plan? So when you make a plan, this is how you want to go. And you want to start from the 10th of January to the 25th of February. And as you begin the project, you want to see whether you are deviating on any of those tasks or aspects or parts of the plan. So this is the reason why it's important to set it to a baseline. So you see that under Format, there's a baseline here, which you can choose. But let's go to Tax. Let's try something. Project set baseline, and let's do baseline, and this pops out. So here you will have up to 10 options or 11 possibilities of setting a baseline for your project. But it's not always advisable to change your baseline. It's always good to have a baseline and only really change it when it's really needed, when all the stakeholders, like in a company, really agrees that that needs to change. So baseline is not something you always change. It's just a way of checking your progress with the actual situation. So let's tag this my baseline. You can also do it for the entire project, or you select some tags. In this case, I want the entire project. Otherwise, I would have selected some tags and then chosen this option. And then I would say, okay. So when I do that, let me go to another view and go to tags, go to my Gantt, and I see tracking Gantt. And the idea of coming to tracking Gantt is to show you that currently nothing has changed because we just made this a baseline. So basically you see there's no deviation or differences. This is just showing you that everything is 0%, but also they're all in line. So let's go back to our Gantt charts normally. So now what happens if we, let's save this. What happens if we change something? So let's assume it took the wooden person not 5 days but 4 days to do the work. See what happens here. So you see that. That's why it's a critical part in what we checked, because it will affect some other things as well. And it takes, but it doesn't change our end date, because it still ends in a date that others can continue. But let's say we change mix the cement, and this went to 6 days, and that will definitely change your dates. Okay, and let's save. Now let's see what happens. We go to tags, Gantt chart, and tracking, and then what you see is initially the wood guy is supposed to take this number of days, but now took this number of days, which is still in line with your milestone, which is good. Otherwise your milestone might shift. But then the mix guy, cement mixing guy, takes longer than planned, which in the black lines are the baseline. The red lines, or maybe orange, red, depending on what you see, shows the new plan. And then you see what happens. And then if you go all the way to the end, because of the dependency and because of the fact that you have a lot of critical parts which are due to the dependencies, you see that everything moves. Now, if you would make a change and say, okay, let this guy, instead of doing this, actually should do it after finishing the first one because we're using the same guy, then automatically you see that that also changes the finish date. And then it tells you that you are away from the initially planned milestone of finishing. So instead of finishing, if we come back here, instead of finishing on the 25th of February, you're finishing on the 7th. And that is due to things changing. But this is what, when you set a baseline, you can always map back to it and see what is really, really, really going on. And that's one good thing about project that you can do. So you can play with this all along and do all kinds of things with the baseline. And when you need to make this a new baseline, you can go back to tags or project rather, and set the baseline. You can clear the baseline and then set a new baseline, but we're not going to do that for now, but that's how you do it. So clear baseline will clear the old baseline, and you can set the new dates as your new baseline with baseline 1, for example, in that sense. So this brings us to the end of this particular video. Thank you, and talk with you in the next video.